here. Just a couple of housekeeping things is that I try to keep track of everybody that logs in today. I would like to remind you, if you wouldn't mind, just sending me an email just saying that you were here, so I can make sure I count everybody. And then after the event, I will get a list of everybody that attended with their name, their email address, and phone number they had signed up with. And I share that with the group as a spreadsheet so you can continue the network. I encourage everybody to, if you're not connected with somebody, since we can't meet face to face, you can at least connect with some people on LinkedIn and continue that relationship building that events like this allows us to do even virtually. Um, we ask everybody to put their microphone on mute. If you have a question, you can either put it in the chat. Aaron's going to be monitoring the chat, and also make sure you silence your cell phone, and if you have TV in the background, you make sure that's on mute as well. And then after the fact, once we get the video, we'll get it edited down and we'll put it up on the YouTube channel and share that as well. Also, just to let you know that we are offering our first course, the Course 200, and the IRWA is emphasizes education and hosting these classes, continue to educate and hopefully sharpen your skills, but also it's the best way to support the chapter. So we do earn money off the courses for the chapter. And Gordon, who is on here for the first time, has donated his time to teach the class. So that's a big benefit for us, and allows us to be able to help fund the chapter as we're getting into 2021, where we'll be an official full chapter of the IRWA. So go Chapter 88. And we also will have a board meeting next Tuesday at 1 p.m. It'll be a virtual. So I will, if you'd like to join, participate on that board meeting executive committee, that's open to anybody that would like to participate. So just let me know, and I'll get a reminder out on that as well. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Matt and Tom, who will be presenting Renewable Energy 101 today as our topic.
Recording is on.
Let's hear it for Tom and Matt there real quick. A little golf applause there, and I'll turn it over to you, Matt, at this time.
Thanks, Johnny. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Pasquinelli. I'm a Senior Business Development and Project Manager for LandSolutions. Tom Morgan is with me. He's a Regional Land Manager. Thanks, everybody, for coming. What we have here is Renewable Energy 101. We use this as a training tool for new agents or individuals that don't have any experience in the renewables field, or even some that do, that we hire to go on renewable projects. So this is basically what we give them, and how we train them as our internal tool. What we're going to do is just start out. So we'll give you a little high level about LandSolutions, and then we'll get into the presentation. And to begin that, Tom's just going to start with the LandSolutions high level atmosphere, and then I'll take it from there.
Thanks, Matt. Well, thank you everyone for joining. It's a pleasure to be coming to you here from Calgary, Alberta. Not sure what the weather's like down there, but we've got a real nice day coming with probably about 85 degrees, so should be a nice day. Once again, thank you for joining us. Just like to talk a little bit about LandSolutions. We're primarily a Canadian company, but we do have offices in Syracuse and Canonsburg, with Matt obviously being our focal point in Canonsburg and Syracuse as well. LandSolutions themselves have been around for 20 years as of February. We were set to have our 20th anniversary party here in March, and it was promptly canceled due to the current situation with large gatherings. So we'll be looking to have that in 2021, I guess. So we've been around for quite a while in the land acquisition space. We originally started out as an asset management firm, which was outsourcing land professionals to a lot of industry. That since evolved, and in 2001, it was began as more of a land acquisition firm, and that was actually when we started getting into the renewable space. The first renewable wind farm that was acquired by LandSolutions was in spring, summer of 2001. So we've been in the renewable game for 19 years, I guess, of the 20 years of our existence. It's been a pretty important business piece, and it's becoming more and more prevalent today with the social license, I guess there is, with renewable energy. A lot of our work in the Northeast US has been specifically with solar and wind and battery storage. Many many acquisitions and many lease agreements, and taking them all the way through permitting. And we're working through quite a few of the, Article 10s and everything like that in New York specifically. So a bit more about LandSolutions. Like I said, we have 10 offices spread mostly throughout Canada, with 2 in the US. About 130 employees to date. It fluctuates a little bit with slowdowns in every area, but we've managed to maintain around 130, looking for a little more as industry picks up. We're primarily focused in the linear business, but renewables has been probably about 30% of our workload, and it increases as we transition into a more of a renewable space. Big thing about LandSolutions is our commitment to stakeholder engagement. We find that's a big selling feature with a lot of our work, and it's something that's transferring to the clients quite well. We put a lot of emphasis in record of contact and keeping those relationships for years to come. So a lot of our business processes and how we run our business and our engagement is managing those stakeholder contacts throughout the life cycle of the project. So it's what we've built our business on, and it helps with regulatory approval and positive community relations for a client, such as a renewable energy project or client, where they are not there just for 10 years, they're there for 25 to 40 years. This is not drill one well, cut cap and abandon it, and you're out of the area sort of thing. There's a lot of community planning that goes into a lot of these wind farms or renewable energy projects. So when you're in an area, you're in there for the long haul. Fly by night doesn't seem to work that well for a lot of our stakeholder engagement. So that's what we've built our business on. It's what's given us the success in the past, and it's what we really stress in these Renewable 101 training modules. Like Matt alluded to, this is just part of our training, but this is where we get the start, because there are a lot of agencies found that have been traditionally oil and gas centered in their education or their experience, and due to the market shift, they are looking to get into something that will keep paying the bills, and renewable energy is one of them. So that's a bit about us, and feel free to ask any questions at the end, I guess, if you want to know more about LandSolutions as a whole.
Thanks, Tom. So, to get into it, obviously, why renewable energy? The big push, never depleted, it's clean, low carbon footprint, reduces reliance on coal, nuclear, oil, gas, quote unquote, the dirty, diversification of the power grid, compatible with other land uses, economically viable, and right now the really big push is its positive public image. That's what my job as business development. It's really a big focus for the potential clients, that positive public image. So that's a big thing for us to push. That's what they're pushing. So it's important to keep that in mind. And we'll go into the types of renewable energy. So further along in this, we're going to go into solar, wind, and battery. But just to take a look at biomass, biomass is organic plant and animal material that is burned for energy. Hydrogen fuel cells. I don't really know a whole lot about hydrogen fuel cells. We've all heard in the past that what hydrogen was going to be the future, that there was nothing had more energy than water if they could split the atoms properly, yada, yada, yada. But that really hasn't seemed to come to fruition yet. So we're still where we are. Geothermal, it's either heating or cooling from the surface or subsurface, bringing it to the surface and using it in power plants or heat pumps into people's homes. And we'll get into how ocean and hydropower fit into battery storage as well. So some of the potential risks, they're very similar to any acquisition project. Competition for sites, the RFP process, statement of, sorry, I lost that. Transmission and sales constraints. That goes along with the transmission lines that are available in the area, the community marketability, and the infrastructure availability, again, transmission lines and substations. In the renewable sector, they're a lot more costly to repair or build new than they would be for a power company or a transmission line for an oil and gas company to put a pipeline in. So the upside of renewables, they're very cost effective once they're operating, as low as 2 to 6 cents per kilowatt. There's a lot of incentives. If you've been watching some of the news lately in renewables, you could see that Cuomo offered new renewable credits lately. So New York is getting a little bit hotter for wind. Another upside is agriculture. So with wind farms, farmers can still continue to produce their crops, obviously reducing emissions, and the economic benefit. So 600,000 jobs projected by 2050 and a $20 billion annual economic impact. Let me skip that for now. So socioeconomic concerns, this is how Tom mentioned our stakeholder engagement. So we like to get involved with the community when we start a project if it's viable with the client. So, if you guys are in the acquisition field earlier, especially like 2007, that time period, if you were around in the oil and gas in Appalachia at that point, I'm sure you've done some kind of community engagement or town hall meeting, basically where you can answer questions about anything about the entire project or how it will affect the community. So we kind of get there. So land acquisition, basically again, the same as any land acquisition project, whether it's oil and gas right away for any type of power. You work with the client to ID any potential conflicts, look at the competitor, the land use, go into the deed books and find out about your competition, see if you can find out pricing, etc. Working with the client to get their agreements, to get their pricing, confirm the land ownership through the land books, parcel sizes, ownership, get the plan ready with the client. As we said, again, hold the open houses and sign the agreement. So the regulatory requirements, similar to, again, any acquisition program, Department of Energy, FERC, the Public Utilities Commission. I don't know the next two. North American Electric Reliability Corporation, municipal, anywhere from local, state, federal, any regulatory requirement. So there's all the headaches that go into renewable energy plus a little bit more in that field. So we considered breaking it up a little bit and see if anyone wanted to answer any of these questions. Does anyone have any thoughts about these questions or want to give some answers? I don't know if anybody's on mute, or should we handle this at the end, Johnny? How do you want to do that?
Well, if somebody wants to chime in there and answer a question, I mean, be a little interactive instead of just being passive.
Hey,
We'll do it.
I could chime in.
Sure.
Justin Campbell with National Field Services, and I worked on some of these sites in New York State before moving down here to Canonsburg. And a lot of the sites, you'd have opposition from the public regarding change in land use. They don't want to see farming go away. And so municipalities may pick up a policy of restricting project development by maybe saying you cannot build on any prime farmland, which you could look up in the USDA soils map. But generally it's view. They don't want that beautiful view to be spoiled, especially if there are people that have moved up from, say, a big city. Maybe they're getting away from New York City or Philadelphia and they buy this idyllic property and they want that like perfect agrarian view. They will not like to see a solar array go in. So a lot of times they have you put in like a barrier, like visual barrier, like trees that want like a cedar. And sometimes those cedars themselves can get munched on by deer, so there's problems. And then the bigger the barrier, the more developed the trees, the more your costs increase. So those are things to consider. And there are many others too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've had several instances where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place between, a lot of the times some of the farmers or landowners there, they want this because this is guaranteed revenue, and then the municipality or the county is looking to, enforce regulations when it comes to the land use and whatnot. We found, especially in northern New York, in the heavy agricultural industries, they're struggling, and whether it be Canada's fault or NAFTA or whatnot, who knows? They want a lot of this income, and then they get roadblocks from the municipality as well. So it is a little bit of a navigation that you have to do. And when we do things like landowner dinners, often, the county representatives are there and they're, voicing their opinion as well. So it is a fine line for us to walk when it comes to responsible development of this land as well.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but I appreciate you bringing that up. So let's go into wind energy. So these turbines, they can be anywhere from 3 feet to 600 feet tall. They can power a single home to an entire community, ranging from 100 kilowatts for a home to several megawatts for a community. Large geographic area, roughly about 50 acres per megawatt. I'm sure you guys have seen these when driving through any interstate. You can usually see them perked up on hills. They usually look like they're never spinning, but when they're spinning, usually very slowly, but at that point they're still producing power. This is just a map showing some of the wind energy in the U.S. I don't know if you guys can see it well. But you can see that Texas by far leads the way in wind energy. And you can see the cumulative energy going up through the years. This is also very difficult to see, but this atlas is just showing you where the best wind areas are and the connection availability throughout the U.S. So this is getting pretty in depth of how turbines work. Basically, the wind doesn't spin the turbines; it's the pressure the wind differences above and below the turbine that create lift, causing the turbine to turn. Through that, there is a generator in there which converts the spinning bearings and drive shaft it generates it into electricity. At that point, it's put into a transformer to increase the voltage, sent to the substation. That substation increases the voltage even further, so it can be passed into power lines, and that is how it's put into people's homes and businesses. Again, getting pretty deep into it, the components of a wind turbine: there's the tower, the gigantic tower, the rotor and the rotor blades. The nacelle is inside the tower, and the electronic equipment is also inside the tower. Timelines for building a wind project, about 3 to 4 years total. You guys can see this for yourself. The market assessment is continuously ongoing. Siting is also ongoing, about 1 to 2 years for permitting and the interconnection process and engineering. You guys can see all that's financing and construction, 6 to 9 months in itself, and they can operate for about 25 years. As you can see, the foundation and construction is a lot big. When I started looking at this, you can see that it's a lot bigger than you would think. Just the sheer size of these things. 60 loads of cement, 30 foot wide, 10 foot deep for just a footer. It's pretty intense. Again, staying deep into the wind blade assembly, some of those blades are just gigantic. It's really interesting. If you guys want to watch some videos on this and just see the sheer size of these things, it's pretty amazing. These are just the steps for the grid connection. We kind of went through that already, not too much that you guys don't know. The transformer section is to transformers and substations are basically to increase voltage. Voltage allows electricity to be passed over longer distances without losing the amperage and megawatts. There's like 3 different things that goes into electricity, but transformers increase the ability to allow electricity to flow over long distances. Anemometer towers are basically towers that assess the atmospheric conditions in the geographical area that's proposed for wind siting. Typical wind farm concerns. So as you guys said, sorry, I forget your name, the man that spoke about the siting concerns with his solar farms in New York. But similar concerns: visual impacts, the sound, environmental effects, burden bath. We'll get into that. Property values, agricultural practices, the lighting, the shadows. You know, if you're by that and there's the sun's at the opposite direction of your house and you have a constant turbine, you know, you get a constant shadow flicker through your house if it happens to be at the right section. So one of the biggest concerns about wind farms is the impacts to bird and bat. So it doesn't cause a whole lot of death, but it's enough to bring out more environmentalists and create a problem. So some of the steps to mitigate this are actually the use of sound. So first of all, they strategically site wind farms away from bird and bat migration routes, but they use sensors and ultrasonic frequencies to detect and deter wildlife, which is very interesting. On the right, you can see the noise comparison chart. So wind turbine does actually produce enough sound to annoy people, basically similar to regular household noises, but if it's outside your house and it's constant, it could be enough to be a deterrent. Some more questions. What can a community look like before and after a wind farm? What are some mitigation measures that can protect? Can anyone come up with some more? And three concerns landowners might bring up when discussing any turbines on their land. Anything further than last time?
What are the life expectancy of a wind turbine, and how recyclable are the components after the lifespan is expired?
That's a really good question. The lifespan is about 25 years. The recyclable component is non-existent, so there are basically wind turbine burial farms. They are so huge, and a lot of people don't realize that, yes, it's a renewable sector, but they really can't get rid of them. Once they're done and out of production, there's just gigantic graveyards of wind turbines, so they still aren't there yet. Into solar energy, what everyone really thinks of right now when we're looking at renewable energy. Solar, most abundant energy source on Earth, the sun. I thought it was interesting that ISS uses only solar power, the International Space Station. Solar panel costs have fallen 99% since 1977. And a fun fact, the potential solar energy we could harness in 1 year is equivalent to the energy of 2.7 magnitude 9 earthquakes, or 40,000 times the total energy consumption of the US. So the sun is there. We have to figure out how to harness it better, but we're doing our best right now, and this is kind of how. So another cheat sheet just gives a bunch of fun facts and figures, very interesting to look at. I'm sure we could pass this out, John, after the presentation. We can pass this around somehow, or leave it with everybody. I won't bore you reading this out to you, but you guys can take a look at it afterwards. It's pretty interesting. So similar to the Wind Atlas, this is a U.S. Solar Atlas. This just shows the best areas in the U.S. for solar. As you can see, the Northeast, with all these tax credits, it isn't the best area for solar, but with all the credits and bonds that are being released, that's where some of the work's going. Lucky for us. So solar panel. I really don't understand, just to be honest with everybody, these silicone types and the anatomy of a solar cell. However, my basic understanding is sun comes down, the power comes down and heats up copper tubing, which heats up water inside the solar cell, which pumps through these solar cells and keeps getting heated up and goes back to a generator, and the heat from the water is used to generate electricity. If anyone has any knowledge of how the solar panels work beyond that, feel free. 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. Nobody. So the construction, commercial solar farms, we've done some that are 5 to 7 acres, but usually you're looking at 30 acres. Years of planning. The largest solar farm in America is about 4 times the size of Central Park, about 3,300 acres. And the largest in the world is 13,000 acres, and it powers about 1.8 million homes. That's in India. Same thing as wind energy for the grid connection. And also similar concerns for solar farms. One of the larger concerns that was mentioned earlier is you cannot farm with a solar farm. Farmers, agriculturalists can't continue to produce crops on their land. We also go into the toxic metals and chemicals that are inside solar panels. One way to mitigate this is when I worked for O.R. Colin, we went to a seminar where we saw that these companies were coming in and planting a lot of certain kinds of pollinator vegetation underneath and around these solar farms, which kept insects and bees really active in the area. So it didn't take away some of the crucial insects in the area, but actually added to them. So we did lose farmland and some vegetation, but we increased different kind of vegetation and the ability to keep bees in the area, pollinators as well. So mitigating those impacts, government regulations, and we can recycle solar panels as opposed to wind farms. Newer technologies are helping the environmental problems with the chemicals and products that are inside panels. And like I said before, offsetting the pollinator loss with under panel honeybee farms and specialized vegetation. Similar, we already went over that, concerns about a solar site on their land. How can we best approach a community education town hall, and 3 barriers to overcome negotiation delays. Anybody want to take any of those questions or have any others up until this point?
Well, I'll add a few things. One thing that we've found success with a client is sheep. We've had farmers purchase sheep because these solar panel farms do take up quite a bit of surface area on their usable land. They are able to graze sheep. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. They trim the grass, keep the weeds down, and they're also able to use for cultural purposes their land. So that is one of the benefits agriculturally to the wind or the solar farms. Don't take all of the land out of production, but do take a fair chunk out of it. So.
Tom, I had no idea. That was very interesting.
Somebody's mic's on. If you're not speaking, we ask you to everybody to mute, please. Justin had posted something in the chat about solar. You want to step in there real quick, Justin?
Yeah, just about the function. There are different types of solar energy generation. One of them is solar hot water heating, which is kind of similar to what Matt was describing. I've seen systems where you can hook up a solar cell. Well, you'd hook up like a large like black surface that would heat up water and then pump it back into a tank for hot water storage. But then with the solar panels, usually you're dealing with basically passing electrons over, what was it? You'd convert the solar rays directly into electricity through photovoltaic cells with a small electric voltage being generated with light passing over the junction between a metal and a semiconductor like silicone. And there are different material types out there and different technologies. Some of them are more adapted to areas of high solar incidence down the southwest, others to areas like the northern parts of the U.S., Canada, and Germany. You'd have a different materials being used for those situations.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm learning as well. I've actually seen one too where, especially in the Southwest, it was basically a bunch of mirrors. It wasn't solar panels, but it was mirrors using the sun and angled in a certain way to heat up like a large canister of water. Basically throughout the day. It was very interesting, but it wasn't solar panels at all. It was mirrors using the sun.
Yeah, I've seen those done like down in Mexico to help communities with no electricity, heat hot water using those mirrors. You do have to have the mirrors travel with the sun throughout the day, or else it'll go off focus. And yeah,
And it was also in a Bond movie as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, well, I swear I didn't see the Bond movie. I just heard maybe someone explained it to me from the Bond movie, but
yeah, they were using it to zap nuclear waste or some damn thing. So,
oh, well, there you go. So then we go into battery storage, which is picked up quite a bit. So I saw one of these pumped hydropower, which is ingenious. I just want to share it with everybody. So energy is stored basically. If you look at the picture on the bottom right, energy is stored in the water up above basically. So when that water is released, It's basically just a hydro dam, but that water can be pumped back up and stored again. So it's basically a constant energy. And there is, I mean, yes, there's technically energy in water, but there's energy in the water just sitting there. The potential energy of when it falls, it creates more energy and then pump back up. So there's constant energy. It's renewable. I just think it was really cool.
Just to
Um,
expand on that a little more, Matt, is
sure.
with the pumped hydro, one important thing to mention with that is it is renewable in the fact that it's using water, but it is still a net consumer of power. The difference is that when they're letting the water free fall, and they are doing it at peak demand times when the price is high per megawatt or per kilowatt, and they're pumping it back up into the storage pond, which is up top, maybe 1,000 feet. They're using power at a low peak power price. So the vector is what makes them the money on this. So it is still a net consumer of power as opposed to, other industries in the renewable space. It uses more power than it produces, but the company is able to make money on the vector between the price differential.
I had no idea that. Tom, I don't know much about batteries. I was basically just going to name these and say that I don't know anything about them. So, Tom, if you want to talk about batteries, I know you know more about battery storage than I do, if you care to.
All right. Well, I mean, batteries, we all know the Energizer, Duracell, all that stuff. These are just on an industrial scale. Lithium, obviously, being the big one that holds the power the longest. There are spaces now for the hydrogen. Hydrogen has such a dirty word when it comes to a lot of these battery projects. There was one proposed just outside of Boston. People hear hydrogen battery and they automatically assume hydrogen bomb. And it created quite an uproar in the community. I believe that was Liberty Power that was doing that one. They actually brought in the former captain of the fire department for the Boston fire department, obviously. So to explain that to a lot of people, because misinformation is the danger with a lot of these batteries. People think they're a large sea can that can be turned into a bomb, and essentially that's what they look like, is a set of sea cans just all grouped together, and they can be somewhat of a target, I guess, if people want to damage the grid. A lot of the times the batteries that they're installing right now, especially in New York, are part of the grid stabilization projects. So they're just to stabilize the grid due to, ebb and flow of the capacity on the grid right now. So thermal energy storage, that's heating up anything. And you can use that for salt. You can use that for water, which we were previously mentioning. Mechanical energy, just storage. Um, ah, Thanks for that, Justin, with the sea can there. They're the large shipping containers, I guess, you see on the big boats and stuff like that. We use them for storage up here pretty much of anything when we're moving, but they're great. Um, Hydrogen energy storage, we've chatted a little bit about that, and then the pumped hydropower, which is obviously the reservoir and the damming. So those are all different types of batteries. You can have many different kinds of batteries that'll work for renewable energy.
Thanks, Tom. Um, so just to go further into that, I'm basically just going to read these because I don't know a ton about battery storage. But they typically connect to solar wind farms and build near substations. I do know that, like Tom said, they're to stabilize the grid. A lot of times, to make solar or wind farms more economically viable, they will use these battery storages to operate. They'll fill the batteries up to capacity at nighttime when energy is cheap, and then unload them during the day when energy is more expensive. Uh, make more money that way, as that pumped hydrogen that Tom kind of explained, or the pumped hydro. Located inside those containers that we were talking about. Lithium iron phosphate, nickel, manganese, cobalt are different kinds. Like they said, they provide grid relief for intermittencies, backup for outages and such. They can safely house 20 megawatt hours on just 1 acre. General info. So obviously we use a lot of GIS. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with GIS, but they're particularly important. What we use them for a lot is project scoping. So we can go through our GIS when we're siting a project, and we can look at the slope of land, which way that slope is facing, those kind of different data outputs to show the proximity of that land to a substation. Most companies don't want to see more than a mile out, maybe 2 miles away from a substation, so they can connect their farm. But a lot of those issues through GIS are used to site, and without that, probably not going to really have a renewable project without GIS info. So milestones for projects: introducing the project, fostering the relationships with landowners. Like we said, the town halls, listening to the concerns, conveying all the information, getting in front of the landowner, schedule a lease presentation. You may have 1, 2, 3 meetings before you sign anything. And then convey the landowner relationship to the development in an appropriate way. Successful acquisition strategies. I'm sure everyone wants to know these, and everyone has their own. My biggest one is becoming 100% familiar with the agreement. And one of the things I really push is, if I don't know something, I say I don't know. When the landowner asks me, if I'm not 100% familiar with the agreement and I don't know, I just have to say I don't know. First impressions, meeting with the landowner. A lot of these things kind of just speak for themselves. We all know what it takes to be successful land agents. We're here. We're part of the IRWA. We know. A lot of the landowner benefits to wind and solar farms, even battery storage, especially in like New York, what Tom was saying. The agricultural business is suffering, so a lot of these landowners want these payments. There is long-term steady income similar to being produced, like a oil and gas royalty. So there is basically a per kilowatt royalty that landowners can negotiate, and that per kilowatt doesn't fluctuate as your oil and gas royalty would for commodity prices. I understand that some of these projects could be 25 years, but it does allow the soil and croplands to rest during those terms.
Hey, Matt, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
With something like the traditional old oil and gas wells, do the landowners get a stipend of electric off these, or is that all going straight into the grid, so to speak?
It all goes straight into the grid. I've never heard of a landowner getting free electricity from that. Similar now, no landowner can get, oil or gas from these gigantic wells, but back in the day, with those shallow wells you could. But if anyone's ever heard of anything other than it going straight in the grid, feel free to speak up on that. So in summary, renewable energy comes from a lot of different sources. Doing this research, I found many more sources than I was aware of. Each source brings its own challenges and rewards to the businesses, consumers, and the environment. As with all industries, new technology is needed to fuel the economics of growth, while competition in skilled employees, software, and acreage increases. Learning about renewable energy is necessary due to the public's general lack of understanding of these projects. As agents, we may be asked to perform community education events or stage booths at county fairs. Our role in land acquisition and stakeholder engagement remains unchanged from other industries, but our knowledge of how we can potentially impact stakeholders with projects and mitigation measures for these impacts must be clearly understood and communicated to stakeholders. So, acquisition stays the same. Our role in acquisition stays the same. It's about us learning about renewable energy and bringing that knowledge to the landowner that changes. So we're back again in a learning stage as we were, 10, 15 years ago. If you guys are in oil and gas, I'm speaking for me. It was a learning stage back then, and I became an expert, and now it's a learning stage again to become an expert in what we need to become an expert in to excel. Back to more questions, and anyone, we can talk about these questions, or if anyone has any further questions, we can go into that. Also, I'm a business development manager. I'm just going to throw this out there. Business development is really hard during a global pandemic. So if anyone needs any land services, feel free to reach out.
We have a question. Is a royalty check calculated on a percentage, or what is the average? And what is the average rate for electric?
So what I've seen. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I'll jump in there. There's a few different models that companies can use. We've done them all when it comes to, hybrids of all the different types. There's a standard, area taken, similar to a surface lease agreement where they just pay for the area that they're using. Or there's the straight royalty method, which is just they get a percentage of the net after all the costs, and that's just based on the resource. Or there's the hybrid, which is they get a base payment plus a percentage of royalty. Obviously, it's less than the all royalty rate for a percentage. The royalties can range. It really depends on the resource that the company is harnessing. So they can range from 5% all the way up to 20% after net. So it really depends on the area. In the southern parts of Alberta, for example, they have high royalty rates, but they have a high wind resource. In the northern parts where the wind is lower, but it's a steady resource, it's running at about 10 mile an hour at all times, the wind, it's a lower percentage because it's just plugging along, dripping along into the pool. So it is really resource dependent for the royalty rate. There's another question. How do landowner payments different between wind and solar? There are, they still do an upfront payment, like an option payment on both of them. The resourcing between wind and solar for the royalty rate is different. It's a lower percentage on solar. Most of the time, people don't want to go with a royalty rate on solar because they do prefer the acreage taken out of their practice as opposed to a royalty, because you just don't know. There's too many things that can go wrong on the solar, I find, that people are a little less apt to sign up on a royalty-based solar agreement.
When you have a project, either a wind project or solar project, do you know approximately what is the time allocation between engineering and permitting and acquisition and the construction? Is there a kind of a set, or does it vary from project to project?
It varies from project to project depending on size. A community solar project, less than say 50 megawatts, you can get that relatively quickly from inception all the way to permitting. When you get up, above 50 megawatts, then you start bringing in a lot of the Article 10s in New York and stuff like that, where the permitting process takes quite a bit longer. You get quite a few more departments involved. It's like building a gas plant as opposed to drilling a well, would be the most comparable thing that I can say for that.
Okay. And what are the at the end of the when the natural life of either the solar project or wind project, is that part of the agreement to have those appurtenances removed, or is that how's that play out?
And it is now. In old agreements, it never was. There are some agreements that when companies, there's no fallback or a regulatory body to have to regulate them to remove them. So you will see these, boneyards that are still standing. And that's because the former company has either, shifted their liability and they've moved on. A prime example is on can't remember what Hawaiian island, but there is a wind farm there on one of the coasts. The wind farm's been abandoned for 15 years and the turbines still stand there. So that is something that has really taken off in agreements, is the fact that they have some sort of remediation or reclamation responsibility, because they are a huge liability with the amount of, it's not just the above ground infrastructure such as the solar panels or the turbines, it's all the cement underneath the ground that creates a big liability and takes land out of production for many years, even if the turbine itself is gone. Those large caisson foundations, I mean, you're looking at 1,000 cubes of cement sometimes. So
All right. Do we have any other questions from anybody else in the group? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Matt and Tom for being this month's speaker and talking to them on renewables. I really appreciate your time and the knowledge that you're able to share with us. As Matt was going through some of these, more standard negotiation tactics, I'm going to tie that back into Gordon's class coming up with the 200 class principles of real estate negotiation. We've got some people signed up for it across the country, but we don't have anybody in the Pittsburgh area signed up for that course. And we are offering some gift certificates for the first 4 people to sign up. So we're kind of promoting to get more people signed up and hopefully go on a pathway to get their IRWA accreditations. And once again, we thank Gordon for donating his time to help support Chapter 88. And just wanted to remind everybody to drop me an email to let me know that you're on. I think I've captured everybody, but I'm not 100% sure. And also we had our October speaker have to cancel because he changed industries. So we're looking to fill that space for October. If somebody in the group would be interested in filling that spot, please let us know before our board meeting next week, because we're going to have to fill that spot. But if somebody is willing to step up and present a topic, we'd love to keep it within the group as well. We will get everybody the sign-in sheet out here in a couple days, and we'll get the video edited down and put up to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate everybody's constant support of the group. We're hoping to get our full chapterhood in 2021. So if anybody else has any questions, speak up now, or we'll see you next month.